Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. Why are you here? Know that this case is no longer your responsibility. Quiet. You find one person without an alibi and just assume that she's the culprit. Do you really think there's no need for a motive for a heart in crime? Crimes are committed by people. There are no crimes without a heart. I'll never accept a theory that neglects the heart. And know that your obsession over the why done it is simply embarrassing. The why done it is unnecessary. Such a thing can be extracted easily through interrogation. Even the great court has already acknowledged that this woman is the culprit. True, the great court does assume that everyone besides the maid has an alibi. But that's just because they heard you say so, and they've mistaken your overconfidence and conceit for wisdom. If any one of the other suspects loses their alibi, your evidence so far proves nothing. Just look at how pathetic some of these other alibis are. Did the clock in the reception hall chime midnight at exactly the right time? Burn Castell, the Witch of Miracles, and Umineko to the Witch of Theater-Going. In the 7th game, she conducts Beato's funeral. She was defeated in the previous game, making her the loser. She has proclaimed that she will tear out the guts of Beato's game to satisfy her irritation. And yet, Ushiromia Maria, a little magician who has inherited the black blood from Kenzo. Unlike Kenzo, she was gifted with talent, and began to tread the path of the magician from a young age. However, her power is still weak, and she hasn't yet graduated from an apprentice's level. However, she is skilled with enchantments, which bestow magical power upon objects. And the magical items she creates are all master class. Beatrice, the Golden Witch, who has lived for 1,000 years. She has surpassed the limits of humans and, like demons, will sometimes appear in response to summons made by humans to offer her power in exchange for a price. She likes black tea and ice cream. She hates boredom and people who deny her existence. Yes, I am drinking a can of Monster energy drink. And here in a matter of hours, I am going to go help my niece with moving some more stuff to her apartment yet again. Last time I did that was a few months ago. It consisted of nearly 8 hours of my day on my day off. This time around shouldn't be as long, though the amount of that 8 hours, like I said, the total amount of time should be less than that this time. But, well, the amount of time spent in a vehicle will probably be about the same. So, in addition to, basically there was about 7.5 to 8 hours of my day spent on that. And over an hour of that time, within that 7.5 to 8 hours, was spent sitting in a truck. Just me and my dad. Technically my stepdad, but I consider him my father. I consider him my dad. Just an hour, 90% of that time was spent in absolute silence between the two of us, aside from the non-stop sound of gospel music. And the other 10% was him talking about God, the end of the world, and me just generally not being a good enough person and not going to... Great, I go to church and stuff, but I don't tell him about it. And again, as far as he's concerned, the main thing is just that I don't go to his church or give tithes and offering to his pastor and all that, so it's like... I'm just saying, even the sitting in silence is uncomfortable, let alone just... I don't know, condescension is the best way to put it. Basically, it's like 90% of the time just, oh, we're just there listening to gospel music. The other 10%, the gospel music's still playing, but now I'm getting bitched at. And, you know, I don't expect that truck ride to be any different. So, I'm going to be spending some of my day off helping my niece move some heavy shit that I really don't want to, and it's not like I'm jacked, it's not like it's an easy task for me. My body seems easily hurt, and I'm always tired, and I don't have really any muscle. So, basically doing something purely out of just the kindness of my heart, which will not only take up some of my day off and will generally be not enjoyable at all, you know, moving things, but no, I'm surprised she waited this long to get the rest of that stuff. Okay. But again, I wasn't looking forward to that truck ride the first time, and, well, can't say I'm looking forward to another hour plus of sitting alone in a truck with my dad, listening to gospel music while I'm getting bitched at by someone who really has no right to be doing that. So I'm just saying, I feel a bit annoyed at that circumstance. Did the dog by the back door bark at everyone? So you managed to prove the maid's alibi false. Congratulations. But does it end there? It may have been possible for her to do it, but does she have any motive at all? Are the alibis for the others absolutely perfect? This maid wasn't the only one with a false alibi. You have to keep searching if you want to find the others. Was there some sort of grudge against the victim or some money-related problem? Don't abandon motive. Don't abandon the heart. Dry mysteries where the motive can just be figured out later aren't worth anyone's time. If the maid isn't the culprit, then why did she fake an alibi? Even asking such a question is a waste of time. Know that we just have to interrogate her, wring out the red truth, and have her sign in blood to everything that happened at the time of the crime. Yeah, you probably can do that. You can just use that torch of yours to squeeze out everything frankly and objectively, as seen from the eyes of God. Though, in general, torture is not a very effective means of information, because at that end of the day, a person won't give you information that's true, they'll give you information they think will get you to stop. Which means an innocent person will confess to a crime they did not commit just to get the pain to stop. Plus, like if you arrest an innocent person, execute an innocent person, or even torture an innocent person and later on it's proven that that person was innocent, you can't take back what you fucking did. Heck. Imagine it was like someone's like a fucking serial killer or does horrible fucking things their whole fucking life. And they say, oh, I'm a better person now. Okay, that's all well and good and all. Good for you. But how does that make up for all the... How do you atone to the dead people? How do you make up for all the wrongs? All the people that have either died, lost people, or suffered, or been hurt. How does that undo what was done to them? But you know what? I'll never accept mysteries and theories that lack heart. I have already taken over responsibility for this case. I even have a decree right here. Come now, aides. Know that there is no reason to hesitate. I order you to arrest this maid. When she gave this order, her subordinates hesitated, looking back and forth between their superior and that man. I won't let you. The real culprit's a different person. It's possible to use motive to find them and their alibi. Trick is an old one. You can't neglect the heart. There's no need for that. We just have to find the suspicious ones who have committed the crime, interrogate them, and squeeze out the red truth. On the off chance that they aren't the culprit, then we'll just have to interrogate the next suspect. You call that reasoning? Stand back. We will arrest that woman. Know that this maid is the culprit. It is forbidden for a servant to be the culprit. Okay. Why is that red? What did you say? The words of power blast away the aides trying to arrest the maid. Van Dine's 20 rules. Rule 11. Okay, I am not familiar with Van Dine. There's a chance I may be familiar with some of his works in some regard, but if I've heard about them, I'm not familiar with the author that he's known for. I'm gonna hop on Google real quick. I'll just type in list of works. My letter F button doesn't work. At least not very well. I had to push it hard. Is Van Dine a real person? Yes. S.S.Van Dine. The Bishop murder case. Is there a way I can get this in easier to read font? Born 1888. Died 1939. He's 50 years old when he died. He's married twice. He wrote a lot of books that I would like to read at a bigger font because it's so hard. I'd like to be able to read. Okay, so S.S.Van Dine, the Bishop murder case, the Green murder case, 20 rules for writing detective stories, the Benson murder case, the I can't read that, Canary murder case, Philo Vance, the Winter murder case, the Scarab murder case, the Kennel, I'm not going to keep saying murder over and over, Dragon, Gracie Allied, Casino. He wrote a lot. Garden, Kidnap, Benson. Okay, we already, like, why does it list Finland, time, modern painting? Misinforming a Nation, Margaret Odell, Informing a Nation, Europe After 8:15, 101 Mystery and Device, Mystery and Detective Classics you should read before you die, Scientific Detective, The Greatest Murder. Neat. But what are these 20 rules? By the way, I wanted to check by reading the titles. I am not familiar with any of these stories. So, Van Dine, S.S.Van. Dine. I am not familiar with you, sir. Let's see, the 20 rules for writing detective stories. Okay, we are familiar with the Decalogue, thanks to chapters 5 and 6 of... I forgot his name. Delanor kept bringing him up. Knox. Delanor A. Knox. Okay, so I assume that this character in front of us is going to have some part of S.S.Van Dine as part of his name. A pseudonym used by the American art critic Willard Huntington Wright. Neat. New York? Okay, the 20 rules. 1. The reader must have equal opportunity with the detective for solving the mysteries. All clues must be plainly stated and described. Okay, rule 2. No willful tricks or deceptions may be played on the reader, other than those played legitimately by the criminal on the detective himself. I still feel like I need to read you guys TV tropes. Would anyone be interested in that? Would you be interested in though granted I would probably have the OBS capture set on the actual TV tropes website. Though the downside about that is it tends, I don't remember if they changed it, but I remember at one point ads would pop up and stuff. I could just have a different backdrop image. I don't know. On the one hand, you could read the words too. On the other hand, it might be better just to have a cool picture to look at. And of course, then there's the idea of music. Sorry, I got distracted. There's one of those little house centipede things, millipedes, whatever, over there on the wall. It's kind of big. It's got but I leave those alone. They're not dangerous to humans, and they generally avoid people, but they do eat any sort of bugs that might come into the house. So, and also they're pretty common, so technically all buildings are supposed to have them. Just most time you don't tend to notice them. So, I'll leave that be just because, well, it's not dangerous to me, and actually, why is it struggling to walk? It's trying to climb my wall, and it looks like it is drunk. It looks like it is struggling with the thing that, insects were built to do. And now it just stopped because I'm talking out loud at it, but it's looking at me stop being an asshole, Lunar. I'm I'm sorry. It's Lunar, you were reading something on your television, on your computer screen over here, and now you're staring at me. Turns out the insect is very self-conscious. Technically, I don't guess it wouldn't be classified as an insect, but I don't remember. I mean, technically, an insect just have to be something with 6 legs. Oh, centipedes and millipedes fit in that category. But in general, main point is this. It's probably noticed that I'm just staring at it, talking in its direction. It probably feels my breath, and now you're turning sideways. Oh, shit! I was thinking in my head about making a joke about the bug, like, turning into Markiplier and leaping off the wall as that punch thing. You know, that meme. But I was thinking about how to make that into a funny joke. It lost its grip on the wall and fell down onto the floor. So, don't know why that is. But it did surprise me. It did surprise me. But yeah, I'm fine with it as long as it doesn't like suddenly start crawling this way and try to crawl on me, because then I will not be okay with that. I'll probably make noises like I did when I played a game called Splasher, where I mean, that totally wasn't a game of me making femboy noises the entire game and cussing. Then again, Thumper and Nerve would also be videos to look up on my channel. I'll put links to all 3 of those things in the description. Let's finish this. Move my Monster energy drink over here. Okay. Rule 3. There must be no love interest in the story. To introduce amour, a French word that makes me think of the band Rammstein every time I see it, because there's a song called Amour, is to clutter up a purely intellectual experience with irrelevant sentiment. The business in hand is to bring a criminal to the bar of justice, not to bring a lovelorn couple to the hymeneal altar? I wasn't aware that there was another way to write the word hymen. Again, would that be an adjective at that point? We'll just copy that. Bring up some more Google. I have Google tell me what this word means. It's an adjective. It is okay. Relating to marriage or weddings, often used in poetic or formal context to describe ceremonies and nuptial traditions. It derives from hymen, the Greek god of marriage. Really? It can also act as a noun, archaic for a wedding hymn. Oh my god. You know, I could have gone. I could have gone my whole life not knowing there was a link between the word church hymns and hymen. Then again, to be fair, the word church can hypothetically draw a connection to Circe, which is something else from Greek mythology, which, if I remember correctly, Circe was a witch that took away people's ability to think. Basically, the idea that an organized religion or organization, i.e. church, takes away your ability for independent thought or free will or the ability to think rationally. After all, many organizations, especially churches, seem to only care about religious dogma, obeying the letter of the law, what people think of you, perceived righteousness, and submission to authority. And oh yeah, vanity and greed. But still, like, why would you say that no love interest can be in a story? That seems unnecessary. The detective himself or one of the official investigators should never turn out to be the culprit. This is bald trickery. Why did I just imagine Asmongold riding a bicycle on Shenron from Dragon Ball Z? Oh, there's that centipede again. He's back on the wall. He still seems to be struggling. For some reason. I don't know why. Is there something wrong with my wall? I don't know. My wall appears to be normal. I don't understand. Okay, I forget what I was doing. The detective himself, I already read that. Wait, bald, oh yeah. This is bald trickery. Why am I imagining a bald eagle with an AK-47 being a skull in the Halo games now? On a par with offering someone a bright penny for a $5 gold piece. It's false pretenses. 5. The culprit must be determined by logical deductions, not by accident or coincidence or unmotivated confession. To solve a criminal problem in this latter fashion is like sending the reader on a deliberate wild goose chase and then telling him after he has failed that you had the object of his search up your sleeve all the time. Such an author is no better than a practical joker. The detective novel must have a detective in it, and a detective is not a detective unless he detects. I don't know why that makes me laugh. Okay. His function is to gather clues that will eventually lead to the person who did the dirty work in the first chapter, and if the detective does not reach his conclusions through an analysis of those clues, he has no more solved his problem than the schoolboy who gets his answers out of the back of the arithmetic. 7. There simply must be a corpse in a detective novel, and the deader the corpse, the better. No lesser crime than murder will suffice. "300 pages is far too much pother for a crime other than murder. After all, the reader's trouble and expenditure of energy must be rewarded. Americans are essentially humane, and therefore a tip-top murder arouses their sense of vengeance and horror. They wish to bring the perpetrator to justice. And when murder most foul, as in the best it is, has been committed, the chase is on, with all the righteous enthusiasm of which the thrice gentle reader is capable." Reminds me, at some point I need to message Noise Auction and ask him about the band for the drive. Or have AI find that for me. The problem of the crime. Okay, rule 8. The problem of the crime must be solved by strictly naturalistic means. Such methods for learning the truth as slate writing, Ouija boards, mind reading, spiritualistic seances, crystal gazing, and the like are taboo. A reader has a chance when matching his wits with a rationalistic detective, but if he must compete with the world of spirits and go chasing about the fourth dimension of metaphysics, he is defeated ab initio. Rule number 9. There must be but one detective, that is, but one protagonist of deduction. One Deus Ex. I was going to say machina, but it says machine here. To bring the minds of 3 or 4, or sometimes a gang of detectives to bear on a problem is not only to disperse the interest and break the direct thread of logic, but to take an unfair advantage of the reader who, at the outset, pits his mind against that of the detective and proceeds to do mental battle. If there is more than one detective, the reader doesn't know who his co-deductor is. It's like making the reader run a race with a relay team. Rule 10. The culprit must turn out to be a person who has played a more or less prominent part in the story. That is, a person with whom the reader is familiar and in whom he takes an interest. For a writer to fasten the crime in the final chapter on a stranger or person who has played a wholly unimportant part in the tale is to confess to his inability to match wits with the reader. Rule 11, which is what Umineko has introduced us to all of this. In fact, if I go to TV Tropes, maybe at some point I'll type in Umineko and Higurashi. Servants, such as butlers, footmen, valets, gamekeepers, cooks, and the like, must not be chosen by the author as the culprit. This is begging a noble question. It is a too easy solution. It is unsatisfactory and makes the reader feel that his time has been wasted. The culprit must be a decidedly worthwhile person, one that wouldn't ordinarily come under suspicion. For if the crime was the sordid work of a menial, the author would have had no business to embalm it in book form. We also know that the person that is Beato, their greatest hobby of all, was just reading every detective or mystery novel they could ever find. Rule 12. Question: if Knox's 10 was the Decalogue, does this make this the Dodecalogue? Same way like a D20 is a dodecahedron? Rule 12. There must be but one culprit, no matter how many murders are committed. The culprit may, of course, have a minor helper or co-plotter, but the entire onus must rest on one pair of shoulders. The entire indignation of the reader must be permitted to concentrate on a single black nature. Rule 13. Secret societies. Cameras? Camorras? I'm not familiar with that. I'm not familiar with that word. Obviously, I assume it's something similar to Secret Society, given its context in the paragraph. Is a powerful Italian mafia-type criminal organization originating from Naples and the, I'm going to guess, Campania region? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Dating back to the 18th century, operating as a decentralized network of independent clans, and engages in drug trafficking, extortion, money laundering, and illegal waste disposal. Okay. Unlike the hierarchical Sicilian mafia, the Camorra is horizontal, consisting of numerous clans that often fight for territory or form temporary alliances. So, well, like it said up here, decentralized network. whereas the Sicilian one, the Italian one, is, I guess technically they're both Italian, but one is, I don't believe, as represented in modern movies. Kind of confused, but okay. Mafias, ETAL, have no place in a detective story. I wonder if this would include the Tokyo group out of Higurashi. Here the author gets into adventure fiction and Secret Service romance. A fascinating and truly beautiful murder is irredeemably spoiled by any such wholesale culpability. To be sure, the murderer is in a detective novel should be given a sporting chance, but it is going too far to grant him a secret society with its ubiquitous havens, mass protection, etc. To fall back on. No high-class, self-respecting murderer would want such odds in his jousting bout with the police. 14. The method of murder and the means of detecting it must be rational and scientific. That is to say, pseudoscience and purely imaginative and speculative devices are not to be tolerated in the Roman policier? I don't know. For instance, the murder of a victim by a newly found element, a super radium, let us say, is not a legitimate problem, nor may a rare and unknown drug which has its existence only in the author's imagination be administered. A detective story writer must limit himself, toxicologically speaking, to the pharmacopoeia? Copoeia, not sure how to pronounce that. But I would say existing list of pharmacological drugs. Pharmaceutical? Once an author soars into the realm of fantasy, in the Jules Verne manner, he is outside the bounds of the detective fiction, cavorting in the uncharted reaches of adventure. Rule 15. The truth of the problem must at all times be apparent, provided the reader is shrewd enough to see it. By this I mean that if the reader, after learning the explanation for the crime, should reread the book, he would see that the solution had, in a sense, been staring him in the face, that all the clues really pointed to the culprit, and that, if he had been as clever as the detective, he could have solved the mystery himself without going on to the final chapter. That the clever reader does often thus solve the problem goes without saying, and one of my basic theories of detective fiction is that if a detective story is a fairly and legitimately constructed, it is impossible to keep the solution from all readers. There will inevitably be a certain number of them just as shrewd as the author, and if the author has shown proper sportsmanship and honesty in his statements and projection of the crime and its clues, these I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Perspicacious readers will be able, by analysis, elimination, and logic, to put their finger on the culprit as soon as the detective does. And herein lies the zest of the game. Herein we have an explanation for the fact that readers who would spurn the ordinary popular novel will read detective stories unblushingly. Rule 16. A detective novel should contain no long descriptive passages, no literary dallying with side issues, no subtly worked out character analyses, no atmospheric preoccupations. Such matters have no vital place in a record of crime and deduction. They hold up the action and introduce issues irrelevant to the main purpose, which is to state a problem, analyze it, and bring it to a successful conclusion. To be sure, there must be a sufficient descriptiveness and character delineation to give the novel verisimilitude. But when an author of a detective story has reached that literary point where he has created a gripping sense of reality and enlisted the reader's interest and sympathy in the characters and the problem, he has gone as far in the purely literary technique as in a legitimate and compatible with the needs of a criminal problem document. A detective story is a grim business, and the reader goes to it, not for the literary furbelows and style and beautiful descriptions and the projection of moods, but for the mental stimulation and intellectual activity, just as he goes to a ball game or to a crossword puzzle. Lectures between innings at the polo grounds on the beauties of nature would scarcely enhance the interest in the struggle between two contesting baseball nines, and the dissertations on etymology and orthography interspersed in the definitions of a crossword puzzle would tend only to irritate the solver bent on making the words interlock correctly. Okay, Rule 17. A professional criminal must never be shouldered with the guilt of a crime in a detective story. Crimes by housebreakers and bandits are the province of the police department, not of authors and brilliant amateur detectives. Such crimes belong to the routine work of the homicide bureaus. A really fascinating crime is one committed by a pillar of a church or a spinster noted for her charities. 18. A crime in a detective story must never turn out to be an accident or a suicide. To end an odyssey of sleuthing with such an anticlimax is to play an unpardonable trick on the reader. If a bookbiter should demand his $2 back on the ground that the crime was fake, any court with a sense of justice would decide in his favor and add a stinging reprimand to the author who thus hoodwinked a trusting and kind-hearted reader. 19. The motives for all crimes in detective stories should be personal. International plottings and war politics belong in a different category of fiction, in Secret Service tales, for instance. But a murder story must be kept tlich? I don't know what that phrase means. So the story must be kept that, so to speak. I don't know what that means. I have a general idea how to pronounce it, but I don't know what this word means. Technically, it's two words. Okay. It can also be written as Gamu tlich with the umlaut thing on top of the U. Is a German adjective commonly translated as cozy, comfortable, or pleasant. It describes a warm, friendly atmosphere of space or social gathering that promotes a sense of well-being. Relaxation and belonging is frequently associated with intimacy, comfort, and a relaxed, unhurried pace. I feel like... Oh. There's actually a comma in between that. So the phrase written here is tlich, but it actually is one word separated by a comma. But it's actually a German word where you replace the comma with the letter U, but a U with an umlaut on the top. It's that sideways colon accent. What does that mean to the phrase? Oh, I was going to click back on the visual novel. I'm reading this thing. But a murder story must be kept comfortable, I guess intimate would be the more... It has to have personal meaning. Okay. It must reflect the reader's everyday experiences and give him a certain outlet for his own repressed desires and emotions. Okay, and Rule 20, which is apparently fucking longish somewhat. I was going to say shit, but it's not that bad. But it is. Got a bunch of 10 extra bullet point lists in here. Okay. And, to give my credo an even score of items, I herewith list a few of the devices which no self-respecting detective story writer will now avail himself of. They have been employed too often and are familiar to all true lovers of literary crime. To use them is a confession of the author's ineptitude and lack of originality. And we have a bulletin point list of 10 things here. 1. Determining the identity of the culprit by comparing the butt of a cigarette left at the scene of the crime with the brand smoked by a suspect. That's something Kyrie pointed out about Hideyoshi. 2. The bogus spiritualistic seance to frighten the culprit into giving himself away. 3. Forged fingerprints. 4. The dummy figure alibi. 5. The dog that does not bark and thereby reveals the fact that the intruder is familiar. 6. The final pinning of the crime on a twin or a relative who looks exactly like the suspected but innocent person. 7. The hypodermic syringe and the knockout drops. 8. The commission of the murder in a locked room after the police have actually broken in. 9. The word association test for guilt. 10. The cipher, or code letter, which is eventually unraveled by the sleuth. Okay, neat. That was certainly worth reading. If you want to torture this maid, make sure you double-check the alibis for the second wife and her lover first. Those two already have a clear alibi for the time of the crime. That an alibi? Damn it, a fool like you couldn't understand no matter how easy I make it for you. If you want to call yourself the head inquisitor, try and figure out at least that much for yourself. Until then, I'll be taking that maid's arrest warrant. Then what about you? Can you prove that this maid didn't commit the crime? Now, know that she was clearly away from the kitchen at the time of the crime. What was she doing then, and where? She can't prove it, I can't prove it, and you can't prove it. No one can. That's why we have no choice but to use these torture devices to interrogate her until the red truth is squeezed out. You can squeeze as much blood and truth from the true culprit as you damn well please. We'll end the video there. I need to try to keep these to be short videos. Till next time, bye.